it's really sad when all this time later, I think 20 plus years, 20, well, now it's, let's see, 2024. So I think in 2021, 2020, the son spoke out. And it's really sad to think that, you're the kid growing up at 12 years old, knowing that your father committed this heinous crime. And you have to live with that for so long. That's so sad. But his son finally spoke out about it. And yes, it was very sad. But before we get to what the son um, said, let's read a little bit about what the defense, um, well, not the defense, the prosecution's thoughts were. He said that there was telltale signs crime undermined his sleepwalking claim. He allegedly tended to a cut on his hand after the murder, hid the weapon in bloody clothes, and put on a pair of gloves before he dragged her to the pool. The prosecutor said that Folter's actions were too complex and did not fit the mold of a sleepwalker. That makes sense because he was doing so much stuff that a person who was sleepwalking would have never done. Um, he was 43 and an engineer and product manager when he was found guilty in 1999 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of his parole of his wife, murdering his wife, who was a preschool teacher. Some of the motives that made the headlines was that they didn't have a happy marriage, they had been feuding over having more children, and about her reported lack of devotion to his Mormon faith. But of course, he denied having um, problems in their 20-year marriage. So, that's what everybody said. No, we argued a little bit, or um, we fight like all married couples do. They tried to minimize it. So the son speaks out, and here's a little bit of that.
The first time you spoke to your father after your mother died, do you remember what he said to you?
He said that he was proud of us and that he loved us.
My name's Michael Flair. My father is Scott Flair, who was convicted of killing my mom. Not everyone can say that their father stabbed their mom and held her in a pool of water, but that's where I am. My father was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, which my understanding is that he will die in prison. In the 20 plus years since I've lost my mom, I think about her every day. I think about what she could be doing with my kids now, what life could have been like, and things that I've missed out on.
So that is, of course, very sad. He doesn't get the opportunity to, he doesn't know what his mom, you know, it's so sad that he um did, and him and his sister, I believe, testified on their dad's behalf about they don't believe that he would have done it, and you know he had no reason to do it. There was no motive. That's what everybody, that's what everybody says. So um here's this. It's very I think what people have to understand is that being in the coming up with a defense, being in like an attorney or whatever, it's very hard to come up with defenses. His whole plan was, oh, if I got caught, I'm going to um, be a sleepwalker. or I'm gonna say I'm sleepwalking. That was literally his whole defense, literally. So, um, this is
exactly what causes an episode in those prone to sleepwalking, but almost all sleep experts agree that stress and sleep deprivation can trigger sleepwalking episodes in those with sleep disorders.
My father's job at the time that my mother passed, he was working on a product for Motorola. He had a team of engineers, and I think he had come to the conclusion that the product wasn't going to succeed and that they might have to just scrap it and start over and start somewhere new.
And he was extremely concerned about how this would affect the well-being of his crew, of his staff.
He had a seminary class he was teaching 6 in the morning. He was spread very thin.
The defense tried to say that this was not Scott Flater acting consciously, that this was a monster emerging from the depths of his unconscious, an irrational, inexplicable eruption of a man who had come under enormous pressure, that his life had become a pressure cooker.
Sleepwalking is triggered by stress when a person can be under a great deal of stress, and it can also be triggered by sleep deprivation when you're very tired or just worn out.
I never bought the defense of killing while he was, sleepwalking or asleep.
Not to sound flippant, but I kind of smirked. I'm like, are you kidding me? Sleepwalking?
The actions during an episode are often illogical and somewhat nonsensical.
Really? This is kind of like almost hand in the cookie jar type thing. You got caught, dude.
The behavior isn't voluntary without intent.
And I just thought, it's a bunch of bull.
The level of consciousness is impaired. The evidence is also clear that he was the one that stabbed, but he did it without any conscious thought. He did it without awareness because he was sleepwalking.
From Times Square.
so that's what again they used as a defense. He sleepwalking, and as you see, he was not believed by many people. Not believed at all. And why is that? If you think about the previous episode I did, the Bugs Bunny defense, where something sound so ridiculous, they usually are. When things sound like people are just pulling straws, just trying to come up with something, that's usually what it is. He had to think of the way he researched it. He looked it up. He looked up and saw the case of the guy who had gotten away with killing his in-laws. And he was like, that's something I can do. Let me kill my wife. Probably for insurance money. I'm not sure if they had any, but probably for insurance money. Let me say there's a sleepwalker. Let me say I was sleepwalking. And then I'll get away with it. And I can move on with my life. That was his thought process. And he really, honestly, truly thought he was going to get away with it. And now if we look at the whole rift of the case, he did multiple searches, like I said, multiple searches of sleepwalking. He was also looking into like how long does it take for a person to die. So there were telltale signs of what he was doing. Like he had a trail of what he was doing. And when he was asked specific questions, you did not hear your wife screaming. You did not hear your dog barking. But you heard a beep, beep, beep on your alarm. That's what woke you up. What sense does that make? You can't hear somebody screaming loud enough that it's waking up the neighbors. You can't hear your dog barking, which is also increasing that sound. But you get woken up by a beep. That beep, 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 beep on your watch. And he said, I don't know. I can't answer that. Of course he can't. Because he knows this is ridiculous as it sounds. But he couldn't tell him that though.